the Field of 68 Media Network. I'm your host, Dan Dickau, former Gonzaga player turned analyst, and sometimes many people think I'm a critic, but I am not a critic of today's guest in any way, shape, or form. Somebody who was instrumental during my career at Gonzaga, helping me to improve and extend my playing career into the NBA and beyond. Someone who I consider a good friend, the pride of Kelso, Washington.
Wow.
Tommy Lloyd. Tommy, how is it?
It's good. Yeah, just like you, hanging out in my office at home, taking things in day by day and, looking forward to, seeing how this season plays out.
You mentioned you're at home. You have a much different schedule, I could imagine, than a lot of college coaches, in the fact that your network and your European recruiting ties probably call for some odd hours and phone calls and breaking down or watching of games. Give me an example of a typical week for Coach Tommy Lloyd.
Oh my gosh. Geez, I don't know if I want to let you peek behind that curtain. A typical week. At this point, with COVID and phones and technology, I do most mornings. I work from home, and I find that I just get more done, with calls and, catching up on games and recruiting stuff. And then, in season, a lot of, self-scout and opponent scouting stuff, do it from home. And then, we practice usually in the early afternoon. So I'll head in, just, around 11:30 or so. And just get to the office and get rolling and help the guys. And, and then coming back in at night with some of the guys to get shots up and stuff like that, or individual video. So, it's a little different now than, when I had Liam here. I was trying to get workouts in with him or go watch him play, so now with him not in the mix, my evenings are a lot more freed up.
You mentioned your son, Liam. He's a freshman at Grand Canyon playing for Bryce Drew. How is his freshman season going? And as a coach of an opponent or a potential opponent down the road, is there any chance there's a Gonzaga Grand Canyon matchup in the next few years?
I would probably say no on that one. But he's loving it. He's having a great experience. They're doing a great job down there. And, we're thankful he's got the opportunity. And, and what we always talk about now is locking in and making the most of it. And he seems to be doing that.
Well, he kind of followed in your footsteps as a player. He's a tremendous shooter. He might be a better defender than what I remember when I watched you. I was a young player, a young kid in Southwest Washington. I remember watching you play in high school at Kelso. You were an absolute sniper from the perimeter. People in Spokane don't know you as a player. They know you as a coach. Give us a breakdown on your game.
Catch and shoot, no take off the dribble, limited defensively. I think that pretty much sums it up. So I made sure my son could move his feet a little bit and at least dribble the ball, because those are two things that were basically handicapped me as a player. So and pushed me into this coaching deal probably a lot earlier than I had wished for when I was younger, but maybe it's the exact thing I needed.
So did you always want to get into coaching growing up in Southwest Washington, or did you just kind of fall into it?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think back, coaching and thinking about the game is always something I've thought about, I always remember having, really looking up to my coaches when I was younger, and and as I got older, I had a coach, Jeff Rhineland, in Kelso, who was a major influence on me, just with his passion and his love for the game and competitiveness. So, I think I knew pretty early on that it was a path that I definitely wanted to go down. I watched my parents work hard, like a lot of kids do. My parents, built up a nice little life for themselves, out of almost nothing. My dad was a carpenter, and my mom went back to school when she was 40, became a teacher. And, I saw how hard my dad worked, and I'm like, man, I want to work that hard, but maybe in a different area. So I didn't do the construction deal. So, but coaching's always been something that I'm passionate about and continue to be passionate about. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
So your kind of network in your recruiting internationally has become well known across college basketball circle. you were exposed to kind of multicultural experiences and understanding, people from a different part of the world at a young age. Because if I remember right, you had exchange students that would stay for extended period of time
Yeah.
with your family growing up. How was that, and how did it impact you now with your recruiting and your understanding?
Well, I mean, for one, I think it exposed me to things that a normal kid in Kelso wasn't getting exposed to. And so it just kind of opened my eyes. And then, I really enjoyed getting to meet people from different cultures and wanted to travel myself. So, so that became like a passion of mine. And I was able to go to Europe when I was in high school, like for, a month in the summer and stuff like that. My brother was actually an exchange student. So all things that I wanted to do. And then, getting to Gonzaga, just everything kind of aligned, I mean, luckily I was able to go and, I don't even know if I call it professional basketball. I was able to go overseas and, play on a couple teams, for a little bit right out of college, and had an awesome experience. Did a ton of traveling. My wife and I, we got married young, and we put backpacks on after one of those seasons in Europe and literally traveled all through Europe, down through Turkey, the Greek islands, to Africa, Mauritius, Australia, Fiji, New Zealand. I mean, we had an awesome, just put backpacks on. I got to do that at a young age, and it's something that we really cherish. And then, getting to Gonzaga, I started there as a volunteer, right when you came on, we came the same time. And, it was really interesting, that just things aligned, and, the program was growing. And I think, Coach Few was thinking, how do we get good enough players here to sustain this thing, and the international thing kind of came up and got thrown in my lap, and I was able to run with it.
So volunteer assistant is where you and I really started to get to know each other. We probably spent way too many hours in that old kennel gym working on just random things, whether it was footwork with your dominant foot or footwork with your off leg, off balance shots, fadeaways, everything. Things that helped kind of prepare me to hit the court the next year running. Well, at what point did you feel Coach Few was going to give you a chance to slide into a true coaching role? And what did you have to do to prove to him you were ready?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I don't know if I was really even thinking about it. I was just, at those times back in those days, Gonzaga was pretty limited resource wise. So, really besides, Leon, Billy, and Scott Snyder, there was nobody helping with day-to-day stuff, for the program. So, I got to go in and get my hands on all the video stuff and just try to take on every opportunity that came my way. And then, after my second year, I think Scott decided that the coaching gig wasn't for him. So, an opportunity opened up, and, to be honest with you, Gonzaga probably didn't have enough money to go hire an experienced guy. So I got a shot, and, I think that I got a shot there that would have been going into your senior year. So, yeah. So, I mean, once that happened, I just, hey, you become a jack of all trades. You run camp, you do whatever, you work guys out, you recruit, you just, whatever it took, whatever opportunity came my way, I wrapped my arms around it and tried to make the most of it.
You mentioned running camps, and before I forget and move on to some other questions, Gonzaga Team Camp is one of the best basketball camps for high school coaches to bring their teams to. Can you tell us a little bit about the horse races that guys have become legendary about?
I think that's more like for the after hours episode that we're going to do later. Right now, I think I don't think so. But no, the camps were awesome. I mean, what a way to meet a bunch of high school coaches, and we had so much fun, and continue to. I hope after this COVID deal, they come back in the same, because I think it's a special experience for everybody involved. And yeah, definitely a lot of memories and a lot of long hours. We'll put it that way. Going to those camps. So
who was your first recruit at Gonzaga? I know who it is, but explain to our listeners who it was, how skilled and how talented he was, and how he came to Gonzaga.
Well, it was a guy named Mario Kasun, and I think it was just a name Coach Few had come across, a Croatian guy, and he kind of passed my way, and I bird dogged it. And, the next thing I know, we're involved with this kid, and I didn't know, how good players were. I was young, but I mean, I figured out pretty quick he was super talented. And yeah, it was just at a crazy time. You know, Mario came at a time, you know, that, you know, now he would have been eligible per NCAA standards, you know. But back then, how they handled international players was, you know, for one, I think for years they weren't doing anything. I mean, I think you and I could probably list a bunch of international players back in the, you know, late 80s and 90s that, you know, were coming over at 24, 25 years old that were established pros. And, you know, Mario came over at 18 and, you know, just, you know, had a youth agreement with these clubs like a lot of other guys that were playing. So he came over and he wasn't able to get eligible, but man, he was talented. And I just, it's one of my regrets to this day, because I honestly think that had he played at Gonzaga, it would have sent his career in a different trajectory. You know, he still ended up getting drafted, I think 40th, you know, ended up maybe by the Clippers, got traded to Orlando or something like that. And, you know, had a little bit of an NBA career, then went over to Europe and had a great career with all the top EuroLeague teams and played in Olympics and national teams. But he was 7'1", you know, could dribble, you know, shoot it okay, but he had a really strong body and two good hands around the basket. I mean, if you would have been able to combine a young Mario, you know, with some seasoning and a Casey Calvary, you know, I mean, you might not have been an All-American. You know what I mean? You might have had, you might have had to get, instead of averaging 20, you might have averaged 12 with a few more assists. I don't know, but yeah, great talent and a great guy. I mean, I'm still in touch with him to this day, and you know, become a dear friend of me and my family. And you know, I'm glad things turned out okay for him. But man, you know, it's one of those what could have been scenarios.
I've told multiple people on many occasions that before, say, Domantas Sabonis in his time at Gonzaga, Mario was the best big that I had ever seen at Gonzaga. And I firmly believe that. It was amazing that he was drafted without ever having played at Gonzaga or any type of college basketball. He couldn't get eligible, but it opened the door for Ronny Turiaf. I remember the first time I saw any clips of Ronny, I was in the coach's offices upstairs, and you waved me into your little cubicle because you guys didn't have the facilities you have now. And you said, look at this highlight. It was Ronny dunks it with two hands, slaps the backboard, and shatters it. Yeah. How was the recruitment of Ronny Turiaf? Because I think that really sparked a lot of the European interest from young guys.
For sure. I mean, Ronny, I mean, it was awesome. I mean, it was one of those things. It was meant to be, you know, with Gonzaga and him. He's a real relationship guy, and he and I hit it off, you know, really well early on. And yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, he might have kind of changed the trajectory of the program, you know, just by him coming. And not only was he a great player, he was an amazing teammate, an amazing person, and kind of, you know, opened a lot of eyes and opened a lot of other doors for other European guys to consider coming over to do what he did. And, you know, went on to have a nice NBA career. And yeah, I mean, again, a guy that, you know, I'm constantly in contact with, one of my favorites. I mean, just a joy to talk to and funny and to tease him all the time. And he teases me back. But yeah, I mean, he did open up the door, you know, for a lot of, you know, further guys. And I just think people forget how good of a player he really was. You know, I mean, he was maybe a guy that was, I don't know if he was a little bit before his time, but, you know, he liked to play make instead of score a little bit. He loved to pass. Wasn't a great shooter, but he did everything else well at the highest level, you know.
I don't know if you're going to remember this next kind of story the same way that I remember, because it would have been my senior year, Ronny's freshman year. And he was really homesick. He's somebody that really values family. And we had an East Coast trip right after Christmas. He got to go home. And then he was supposed to meet us on the East Coast. I think it was at Newark Airport. We were going to play Monmouth and St. Joe's.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember you were stressed as all heck because you weren't 100% sure if Ronny was going to get on the plane back and meet us on the East Coast. Am I remembering that correct?
I mean, hey, listen, I got probably lots of those stress moments in my life, so I've kind of tried to suppress them. But no, I remember the road trip. I don't remember him not wanting to come back, or maybe not coming back. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think those guys go through a lot. I do remember though how hard it was for him, during those times, because, Ronnie, I mean, he left home like at 13 or 14. He's from the Caribbean, from Martinique, and then basically gets shipped up to Paris to play at INSEP. So, I mean, that's a lot to take on. And the next thing you know, he's 18, he's living in the US, and learning a new language, I mean, one of the great stories I remember about Ronnie is walking with him through campus, and he was just learning what this term redshirt meant. And he was asking me, can I redshirt? And I'm like, no, you're not, you're going to play. Well, I really want a redshirt. I want to take my time. And so, but I'm like, no, this team needs you and you're good enough to play. But, just him, he was young and didn't know. And it was probably hard when he got here, So he wanted to take a little more time. But I remember that about him. He wanted a redshirt as a freshman. And I'm like, no. And then by his second year, the next part was, he was really coming on that second year, I think the year after you left. And, we had all those good big guys, Zach, Richard, Corey, and Ronnie was kind of coming on like gangbusters. And, I think Coach Few was like, we wanted to start him, and so I asked Ronnie, he's like, no, I don't want to start. The older players should start and I'll come off the bench, and I think we went over to Maui and he averaged like 20 some points a game. And I think that ship sailed, and I think he started after that.
Well, the experience that Ronnie had and the success that he had really kind of opened the floodgates for European guys to trust you and to come to Spokane and have a great experience. What does a typical European recruiting trip look like for you when you head over there? How long is it? How many typical countries do you try to hit? Or is it mapped out that you're going to see this kid or this program connect with that coach when you head there?
Yeah. I mean, basically how it works now is, you're really, your only time can really do evaluations over in Europe is like at a FIBA event, so in the summer when they have like a European championship or an under 19 or an under 17 world championship, you go over and you can, actually evaluate and watch the kids live. In April, there's usually a recruiting period. In September, where you can go over and do like home visits. So, what I'll do on some of those trips, what I've done in the past is, say, there's a 6 or 7 day window. I'll head over for most of that window and, basically try to hit 4 or 5 kids during that time, and it could be, you land in Paris and you go meet with the kid there in Paris that day. You always, whenever you land in Europe, usually you land in the morning there early. So, you're wrestling with jet lag, but you try to knock out something that day so you don't waste a whole day. Meet with the kid there, and then maybe the next day you'll fly to Zagreb, meet with a Croatian kid, I don't know, somewhere in Croatia, and then maybe up to Serbia to meet with the kid from there, and then then maybe you have to go to Denmark to meet with the, what I mean. So you just kind of get day by day, and it's kind of, and those trips are, I mean, they're awesome because I love being over in Europe, but they can be exhausting because a lot of times it's a 6 a.m. flight to a new city every day. And, in Europe, it's a lot more compact than the US. So, you can go, a flight from Zagreb to Copenhagen, for instance, could be 2.5 hours. It's like for us going Spokane to LA or something. So yeah, it's feasible because everything's close and you just try to, stack them up on top of each other as best you can and knock them out. And, it's a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles for sure when you're over there. And it's not, you're not getting to relax and, open air cafes and, smell people smoking cigarettes and sipping on coffee. You're not able to do that on those trips. They're pretty hard hitting for sure.
How many countries have you been to in Europe then? Because it sounds like you did almost all of them.
I do need to sometime, a lot. I mean, I've been to, I'm probably, 80, 90% of them for sure by this point. But yeah, someday I need to go through and look, because I know that's one of Ronnie's deals. He wants to visit every country in the world. And I know he's kind of put that on his list. And he's been to a lot. I know that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. That's a goal of Ronnie's. Now, I had Shemek on the same podcast a month or two back, and he talked about Coach Few heading over to Europe on his.
That was his only time he's ever done it.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is that Coach Few's only trip to Europe?
Yeah, and just with Shimmy, I thought we were in good shape, but we were in off season, and I think we put a lot into him to recruit him, and I really wanted to get him, and I just said he said, hey, can you come along on this trip? And we saw him, and we might have went and visited a kid in Paris. Yeah, that's the only time he went, and so yeah, but it was a good one. It was a good one. Shimmy obviously is I mean, somebody I appreciate a ton. I mean, he's one of my all-time favorites and just such an impactful player. I think people forget, just with him on the court, I felt like he always had an advantage and a great opportunity to win. And I mean, he was on a lot of great teams, but he was a common denominator. And I think he's the winningest all-time player in NCAA Division I history. I think he has the most wins, which is a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, I think you are right that Shemek has the most wins in NCAA history. Did Coach Few try to go fishing at all when he was over there in Poland?
No. I think in Poland, he's traveled. I mean, he's open to that stuff, but I think, it was never been to Poland. I think it was, a little eye opening for him. And, I don't know. I think I think we would have went like in April or something. And yeah, so, the weather was probably still cold. But I know he did have a great day in Paris because, we went to Paris, and so I obviously, mapped the trip out. So we saw Shimmy first, and then we went to Paris to see a kid. And, so I booked a hotel like near the area the kid's family lives. So it'd be, Paris is massive, right? Like, I mean, it's like, it's not like anything you really see in the US. I mean, it would be like probably like an LA or a Chicago or a New York City probably is the best one, I mean, it's just a massive, these little districts and, parts of cities that stacked on top of each other. And so we stayed out in his part, and then we went to a hotel. Some of those hotels in Europe aren't, they're not the Ritz-Carlton or the Marriott's we're used to. So Fewy was like, I don't know if I can do this one. I'm gonna go. You told me where to meet, and we'll meet there. But then I'm gonna go get a hotel. And he went and stayed at the Chariot on Champs-Élysées, the main street there. And I think he had a great day. I think he, which is an amazing place. I mean, every time I go to Paris, I make it a thing to end up at the Louvre and then walk, because from the Louvre you can just basically walk straight up to to the Arc de Triomphe, along the Champs-Élysées. Amazing. I mean, it's epic through parks, and I mean, it's like a must do. And so I do that every time I go to Paris. It's kind of one of my things. And so I think he did something similar to that and stopped at a bunch of cafes, and I think he had an awesome day. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. But I think at this point in their life, they like hanging out at the lake and going to Maui, instead of on those European adventures that I enjoy.
So with all of your time in Europe and the connections that you've made over there, as well as the success that you've had as an assistant and now an associate head coach at Gonzaga, I'm sure there's been opportunities that have come your way. And I know you well enough that you don't search them out, but I'm sure people have searched you out. Has there been any offers that have intrigued you, especially in Europe? Because I could see with the way that you teach the game when I've been at practice, you would be a tremendous coach in the Euro League or Euro Cup, one of those places.
I mean, nothing like that has happened. At some point, I mean, I have, put in my, back pocket that eventually I would be involved with one of those, a European team or whatever, just a national team in like a summer competition. Because I've been going to those FIBA events for years, so I would like to be on the other side of it at some point, but that's more like, it would be like a side summer gig, something like that, but nothing like that, and I do love it over there. And I've kind of used Europe in my mind, not just for recruiting, but just to be exposed to a different type of basketball and to be able to think different. I think, when you start thinking about, us young American coaches, I'm not as young as I used to be, but, we were all kind of brought up the same way in basketball. I mean, it was motion, it was flex offense, motion offense, on the line, up the line, denial defense. I mean, when I played, we didn't even know what ball screen coverages were, nobody set ball screens. And so, I think once I started getting exposed to things in Europe, I started to see the game a different way. And I chose, to really pursue that and spend time watching it and learning it and trying to implement some of those things at Gonzaga. And I can really see the last, 8 to 5 years, the U.S. game has definitely trended and been more influenced by what's happening in Europe with the ball screen spacing and movement stuff and reads. So yeah, no offers like that, but someday I wouldn't mind doing a national team gig for sure.
Well, if you're on the national team for some other country, I want to try to go watch, because I've had 2 stints in Europe playing. Both ended, unfortunately, with injuries, but it is a different style of game. It's more team-oriented. It's more based on space, kind of creating disadvantages against your opponent. What's the biggest area of Coach Few's growth that you've seen with him being involved with USA Basketball and coaching in some of those international competitions?
I mean, I think, just coming back and seeing, how those teams move, and how they pass the ball and how they connect actions, and I think that's stuff that we've really tried to do, whatever. I mean, I guess there's no crazy secrets, in the sauce, but, like one of the things we really try to emphasize with our guys is just how we move on offense, and how we move and how we react to each other and having a basic understanding for what we want to do in certain spacing scenarios. And then, the beauty of our system, and, a lot of it's Coach Few, is, I think we get more enjoyment out of our players creating a good play on their own from the concepts we play, rather than us calling a perfect set, and to me, that's one of the biggest things when I watch teams play. There's just this control factor that a lot of American coaches want on the game. That sometimes I think in the end, it almost ends up inhibiting their team, and their players aren't able to make adjustments, make reads, to free flow and display with this conceptual understanding. And I know, that's what we really try to hammer on, is just, how to play, not run plays, and spend a bunch of time with that. And it takes a lot, and yeah, you're prone to make some mistakes, but I think what also does it opens up a element of creativity that makes it fun to play and hard to play against.
Well, this year's team has been really fun to watch, and I think they epitomize a lot of what you just mentioned in the fact that you will have stretches where you just play out of concepts. What is it? What is the message going into most games to the team as far as, hey, we want to try to play out of these concepts. These are the 4, 5, 6 sets maybe we want to take a look at, see how the defense is guarding things, and then attack in a different way. What does a typical pregame prep message look like to the team?
Well, you nailed it right there. It's playing out of certain concepts based on what we expect their coverages to be. And, whether it's how they want to guard the post, how they want to guard ball screens in the middle of the floor, side of the floor, and then based on what's our lineup, are we going to play with a big lineup or a small lineup? And then, having a handful of sets, we can work with that we feel like maybe we can gain some advantages. But I think the main thing, you're right, is just it's concepts, and then, we want to, for every, ball screen coverage / spacing scenario, we want to have ways conceptually we attack that. And, so we'll spend a bunch of time, trying to drill that stuff. So when those moments happen in a game, our guys can react and play out of it naturally.
Well, one of the best things, you do a ton of things well, but I think one of the best things that you do is develop talent and develop players over the course of their time. I'm an example of working with you closely. You find little things to work on. What player in your mind has had the most surprising development over the course of their career? Maybe someone where you thought, hey, maybe by their senior year they can be a bit player, rotation player, but they've absolutely maximized their opportunities.
I think just because it's fresh in my mind, I think you'd have to say Joel. Joel has come so far in his 4 years at Gonzaga. His first year, he came to us, he graduated high school early, and we had a lot of scholarships available. So, we took him late. It was kind of a project type deal, and 17 years old. He should have been at Gonzaga Prep, playing with Liam and Anton's what he should have been doing. But he was graduated. So he was with us, and he was so far behind physically and fundamentally, but he was a great kid, had a great spirit. And I remember having that talk with him up in my office, like, hey, I think you should redshirt, and I think he was like, blown away. and like, what? Like, he thought he was ready to play. And, but he was so far from it. And then, just to watch him kind of struggle that first year. The second year he came back, we had a really good team. And, he, it was hard for him to get minutes, but he got through it. And then that third year, last year, he ends up really, really helping us. Starts on the bench. Then next thing you know, he's a starter. And then this year, he's just such a good player at connecting everything in our offense. And he saves so many possessions when there's nothing going on in those possessions, and he makes the team look great with, whether it's a cut or, a jump stop swivel to feeding the duck in on the post. So, he would be the one. He's a great example. And I think it's really important. I think you got to have guys like that in your program. I think that's what help you gain experience, and I think those guys like Joel, that if you can get him to stick around those second and third and even fourth years, especially when they haven't played early in their career, they really value the opportunities they get. So, Joel's, if he would have got, 15, 18 minutes a game last year, he would have been happy. And would have been all on board with the team. I think sometimes when these kids expect a lot early, and maybe get a lot early, then it never ends up being enough, but so you need to kind of have that stratification in your roster. You have your guys that play a lot, your guys that you're role players, but they're really happy being role players. I think that's huge. And I think that to me, those are guys you got to develop within your program. And they understand your culture, and they value the opportunities they get, and they understand they're there to serve the team and, maybe help the better players. I think that's huge. And the player development piece to me is still, it's the most fun of it. I think, you tell people like, everybody talks about recruiting, this and that, because I don't know, maybe it's the lure or of what's to come, and it seems sexy. But I would rather coach and work a guy out every day of the week than, do a bunch of recruiting calls. But, I think you also understand you got to do both. So you just put time into both, because I think what happens at a lot of programs, I know I'm giving you a long answer here, but is the emphasis is always on recruiting, and the emphasis on development gets lost.
Last question, Tommy, before I let you go, because I'm sure you've got film to break down, recruiting calls to make. If you guys can win a national title this year, as my little one is hollering, if you guys can win a national title this year, national title this year, what would that mean to you?
It would be awesome. It'd be awesome for the university, the community, for Coach Few, for all of us that have been involved, for all you former players, that were, that incrementally help us build this to where it is today. It would be epic. Hey, obviously we have a good team, but, we don't take anything for granted, and hopefully we can maximize this opportunity down the stretch. I think that's all we're focusing on getting much more ahead of than that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Tommy. I know you're very busy, and you guys have a tremendous season going. I've had fun watching it as a fan. I've had fun calling the games as an analyst, and as a Zag, I'm pulling for you guys the rest of the way.
Appreciate it. Hey, make sure you pass on and tell Jeff Goodman that you deserve a raise, and you guys are doing a great job. So
awesome. Will do. Thanks. And I will pass that message on.